it's just amazing. We had a protester murdered by the police. So let's listen. And Black Power Media is also in this clip towards the end. Let's pull it up. So transitioning to this new topic, and it's going to be a very, very short topic. But if you haven't heard the full story about what's happening in Cop City and what it is, Cop City is basically they're planning a police training ground in this area, in this forest that is in the smack dab middle of a black working class city or community, and it's on a sacred, not sacred land, but like forest. It's in a forest. And this protester was killed protesting the construction of this Cop City, which is just a training ground to train them to be they painted this as some sort of Martin Luther King, I forget the phrase, and I think he says it in this video, but when they had introduced this Cop City, it was like, yeah, this is in the legacy of Martin Luther King. Just terrible. Let's listen.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. In Atlanta, Georgia, calls are growing for an independent investigation into the police killing of an activist Wednesday during a violent raid on an encampment of protesters opposed to the proposed $90 million Cop City training facility in a public forest. Law enforcement officers, including a SWAT team, were clearing protesters who'd occupied a wooded area outside the center when police claimed they were fired on and fired back. Police say a Georgia state trooper was wounded by gunfire. Activists have now released the name of the victim of the police shooting, longtime activist Manuel Terán, who went by the name Tortuguita. In an audio statement sent to Democracy Now! Thursday, an Atlanta forest defender describes what happened and who Tortuguita was. They asked to remain anonymous and for their voice to be distorted for security reasons.
On Wednesday, January 18th, multiple police departments descended upon Weelaunee People's Park in unprecedented numbers and force. They blocked access to the park on both roads and bike trails. Some people were arrested for attempting to document police actions that day at the park. Gunfire was heard at 9:04 a.m. About a dozen shots fired in rapid succession, followed by a loud boom about a minute later. For hours after the murder of Tortuguita, police continued to hunt, assault, and arrest our brave forest defenders. Those defenders in trees were targeted with pepper bullets. One tree sitter had their tree house, which stored food and water, cut from beneath them. They were left without food and water for over 12 hours up in the tree, as police waited at the base of the tree to capture them. This same tree sitter continued to stay in their tree until the next morning when they were arrested. Other forest defenders were chased by police dogs. These defenders had to hide and flee for their lives, all the while with the nauseating knowing that their dear comrade had been murdered in the sacred land that we call home. Tortuguita was a radiant, joyful, beloved community member. They fought tirelessly to honor and protect the sacred land of the Weelaunee Forest. They took great joy in caring for each and every person that they came across. Tortuguita brought an indescribable jubilance to each and every moment of their life. Their passing is a preventable tragedy. The murder of Tortuguita is a gross violation of both humanity and of this precious earth which they loved so fiercely. Do not turn away from this violence. Do not allow the callousness of the police state to numb your heart. Honor Tortuguita by bravely witnessing the ongoing injustices the police and corporations are enacting upon the Weelaunee Forest. Honor Tortuguita's legacy by embodying their joyous bravery. Tortuguita's presence on this earth is a gift that will keep on giving for generations to come. It is time for people to join this movement and to say no to this pointless escalation by the police.
That was an anonymous statement by an Atlanta forest defender sent to Democracy Now!, his voice disguised. Vigils for the slain forest defender Tortuguita have taken place from Los Angeles to Minneapolis to Charlotte to Chicago and Atlanta. Activists held a vigil the night of the shooting and are planning a march on Saturday. For more, we go to Atlanta to speak with Kamau Franklin, founder of the organization Community Movement Builders. Kamau, welcome back to Democracy Now!
That's also founder of Black Power Media. You can check them out on YouTube.
Can you please tell us what you understood happened?
Well, we have very little information on what took place besides what your earlier recording just said, that the only version of events that's really been released to the public has been the police version, the police narrative, which we should say the corporate media has ran away with. To our knowledge so far, we find it less than likely that the police version of events is what really happened. The idea that he was sitting in a tent and fired out of the tent at basically a SWAT team, DeKalb County Police, Atlanta Police, and Georgia State Troopers who were there in great numbers to do the...
Yeah, it's not believable. But as long as the police said that's it, it's completely not believable, the police story. But that doesn't matter.
Raid that they conducted in the park. And the idea is that this person shot and then they fired back. As the little intel that we have, residents said that they heard a blast of gunshots all at once, not one blast and then a return of fire. Also, there's been no other information released. We don't know how many times this young person was hit with bullets. We don't know the areas in which this person was hit. We don't know if this is potentially a friendly fire incident. All we know is what the version of the police have given. And that's why we're calling for an independent investigation, not one that's done by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
I was going to say independent investigation by another law enforcement office organization, but Kamau dispels that right away.
Not one that's done by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, not one that's done by any federal authority, but a complete independent investigation, because that's the only way we're going to know what really happened. But right now, based on what we do know, we cannot say anything except that this is probably a political assassination. This is something that could have been prevented. There was no reason for them to take the tactics that they did.
This is what my guess would be. This is we need to put a head on a stick. We need somebody to show as an example here that you're not going to stop capital and capitalists from what they want to do. So this is to instill fear. And all they have to say, oh, we heard gunshots.
Terms of going into the forest with weapons in hand, with pepper spray, with live ammunition to go shoot forest defenders who are engaging in civil disobedience and direct action politics.
Kamau Franklin, can we step back and talk about what proposed Cop City is and why people are encamped there?
Cop City is an idea that came after the 2020 uprisings by the city of Atlanta, the Atlanta Police Department, and the Atlanta Foundation, Atlanta Police Foundation. The idea basically is that they want to develop a militarized police base that's right next to a Black and brown working class community. And by building this space, they want to cut down over 100 acres of forest. They want to develop an area where there's a room for explosives testing, over 12 firing ranges, a place where there's a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad, a training center for them to practice crowd control. We should also mention that they are engaged in international training with the Israeli police. And so we think this project really is the beginning of a militarized police base here in Atlanta, which will be the largest facility of its kind in the country. And the reason for doing this, coming out of the uprisings, we believe, is to stop movement politics and movement building in Atlanta, to coordinate efforts across the country with other police departments and now internationally to stop movement building. And we think this is going to be further sort of terroristic action on Black and brown communities by a police state which is out of control at this particular stage.
Kamau, you had a piece in Truth Out, and I wanted to, it was headlined, MLK's vision lives on in Atlanta's fight against new police training facility. Interestingly, in 2021, the city of Atlanta announced plans, for Cop City, saying it was to carry on the city's civil rights legacy of Martin Luther King and others. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a dystopia where the legacy of Dr. King is being used by city officials, the same city officials who say that they love Good Trouble, they love John Lewis, they love Dr. King. When Dr. King was alive, Dr. King was working against police brutality and police militarization. Dr. King poignantly stated that the police themselves harass and are open to and conduct raids on communities. Obviously, Dr. King was surveilled by the FBI, a local police task force, along with federal police task force. They harassed Dr. King. They sent a letter to Dr. King to kill himself. And so these tactics in different ways continue today. The Cop City task force, which is developed between the FBI, the DeKalb County Police Department, the Atlanta Police Department, and several other agencies, Homeland Security, is basically a task force to stop out movement activity because they're afraid that the protesters, the various types of protests that are happening, are getting the word out that no one has asked for Cop City. Any survey that's been done has shown that 70% of Atlantans have been against the building of this facility, but yet they went ahead and decided to build it anyway.
70%.
And now that there's a protest movement against it, they're using all actions, everything in their capability and capacity to stop this movement. And now they've turned to the idea of actually murdering protesters as a way to stop people from going into the forest and to stop the defenders from defending the forest.
Just astonishing. Now let's go to, because it's a pretty big story on social media, at least Twitter. So let's go there and just read a few tweets. I know Steven Donziger had retweeted it, or maybe, and I only mention him because it's a big white name. A lot of people who may listen to Black Power Media or listen to Steven may not listen to Black Power Media. So it's good that this would get out. But Cop City, let's just type in Cop City and see what pops up here. I do have some saved, but I want to see if there's any new. And you see this is what we're watching right now on Democracy Now! All right, so and then there's an article that accompanies it. We will look at that for a brief moment in just a bit here. I do have it up now, so we'll look at that in just a brief moment. Okay, so there might be an update I just read on that website. So we'll get to that part in just a second. All right, so here goes one. That's what I was saying. This is Steven Donziger. Is that how you say his name? How do I get this? Let's look and see here. How about I do this? Let's refresh. Okay, now it may do what it's supposed to. There we go. I was trying to get that little thing on. So here is Steven Donziger. Okay, yeah, I did say it the right way. Breaking. After killing a climate activist in Atlanta, police hit 7 more protesters with huge bogus terrorism charges. The total number of activists protesting Cop City who face terrorism charges now stand at 13. Pure intimidation. Stand strong. And man, this is ridiculous. The charge. So we'll go to that article too, just to briefly see if there's any information there that is new, because that's what I'm trying to report. Just any updated information about what's happening with Cop City. So that's Steven. Let's look at some other tweets here. And this is what Kamala was referring to. Like, it's getting out. More and more people are getting out. Like, what the hell is going on? Now, let's read this one. I think this is let's read this one. So this says, I'm not sure people know just how bad the Cop City project in Atlanta would be. That they want a whole mock city to practice police repression. Right. So think of, I don't know if you know Universal Studios. Because I'm in California or in Florida, I'm sure you know. But this is like a Universal Studio backlot.
Atlanta is
where they have a whole city made up where you can film and stuff. They're making up a whole city so they can figure out how to attack the proletariat. Let's listen.
Atlanta is planning on building a $90 million training ground in the forest to practice urban warfare tactics. Activists are calling it Cop City and say it will harm Black people and the environment.
The facility would be a space where the police could practice tear gas explosions, bomb testing, have a shooting range, practice high-speed chases. Like, they're literally going to build a mock city of Atlanta to practice different urban warfare tactics. The purpose of this project is to be able to better surveil, better suppress, and better prevent liberation movements that directly address the exploitation that Black and working class communities are feeling.
Atlanta actually increased its police budget after Black Lives Matter protests and a movement to defund the police. More than 70% of Atlantans disapprove of Cop City. In 2021, Atlanta's population was almost 50% Black. 20% of Atlantans live in poverty.
The Atlanta police have always been antagonistic towards poor and working class people. They have been active agents of gentrification.
Cop City is proposed to be built on land that included a slave plantation and a prison farm. The construction would cut down part of the South River forest, which helps prevent flooding and protects against extreme heat. Activists against Cop City are occupying the forest, building barricades, and protesting against corporate sponsors to stop construction.
Defund the police, abolish them, and invest in the things that actually keep us safe. We've been ramping up our efforts to get folks in the community trained on things like restorative justice, on medic trainings, on de-escalation tactics, disaster relief, all the things that we know actually keep us safe when we're in crisis. And so we don't need to call the police. Folks won't feel like they need to engage 911, that will have those skills in our community and can meet our own needs.
That's such an important point about policing ourselves. And let's now continue right here, Max Blumenthal. So like Kamal alluded to or said in that interview on Democracy Now!, it's getting out. Like, this killing is only going to get more people involved in understanding what's happening and spread the word, and it's going to get more resistance. Cop City, this is Max Blumenthal. Did I say Mike earlier? Max Blumenthal. My apologies if I said it wrong earlier. Cop City is a 90 million 80-acre de facto military base where police will train in urban warfare tactics to be deployed against American citizens. You see how Stephen Donziger retweeting that, got Max Blumenthal to quote tweeting, and so on and so on. And this Max just did this a few minutes ago, not even 10 minutes ago. So this is what one of the unintended consequences of what they're doing, their tactics against people, is doing. And here's another video we'll play before we move on to the article here.
We construct barricades to keep police out, police, construction, contracting companies. You hear gunshots all the time because there's a police firing range in this. Yeah, you can hear those shots right there.
Occupying this forest is how activists are resisting the construction of a $90 million state-of-the-art.
You hear gunshots all the time, but the police said, we heard it, we were shot upon. We were shot upon, and that's why we shot him.
The Art Police Training Center protesters call Cop City. The facility will be developed on one of the largest green spaces in Southeast Atlanta, which has a history of oppression.
All of it. It will be clear cut. They cannot wait. They just want to go in and bulldoze everything and then write the history the way that they want to write it.
The fate of the forest is up in the air as the police and forest defenders both refuse to back down.
Those people, to me, through their acts, are actually domestic terrorists.
Major corporations are pouring millions into this project, financially pressuring politicians to build Cop City.
Why did you vote to approve this facility?
Surrounding neighborhoods that are more than 75% Black say their concerns have been silenced.
Our opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't count.
It's disrespect. And that's what folks who live here ought to be just enraged about.